The new condo legislation comes nearly a year after the Champlain Tower collapse in Surfside killed 98 people.
Soon, condo owners here in the Tampa Bay area will need to be thinking about saving a little more money in order to maintain some aging buildings.
Hi, everybody. On May 26, 2022, the Governor, Ron DeSantis, made a grand announcement by signing the Senate Bill 4D for the building safety, along with the Senate Bill 2D for the condo insurance cost stabilization. The SB 4D was passed as a response to the collapse of Champlain Towers in Surfside, Florida in June 2021. This law is expected to wake up the entire condominium industry in Florida. While, as usual, most media houses have only copy-pasted the law, only a very few of them have actually cared to explain how exactly SB 4D needs to be brought to practice. Let's dive deep and try to understand what are the current major hurdles in the path of the execution of this law, and most importantly, how McCall Engineering can help. This video is brought to you by McCall Engineering, but more about the contact information is at the end of our video. To understand the SB 4D, we first need to understand what really happened with Surfside condominium collapse in the year 2021. On June 24, 2021, a 12-story beachfront condominium building in the town of Surfside collapsed, resulting in death of 98 people. This building was constructed in the year 1981. Yes, that's not too old. According to a news report, in 2018, an engineering firm performed an inspection of the building and issued a report that noted that Champlain Tower's pool deck was flat and not sloped. Now, the question is, what happens if the pool deck is flat? Well, a sloped deck allows water to drain properly, whereas a flat deck can lead to water pounding. And water pounding, leads to water seepage and damage the underlying concrete. Also, waterproofing below the pool deck was beyond its useful life. So the building had major structural damage to the concrete slab below the pool deck, and there were signs of corrosion, spalling, cracking of the concrete columns and beams in the underground garage. Now, by the looks of it, you would guess the building actually survived the test of time many years on Earth and faced hurricanes like Irma, Wilma, Irene. But guess what? The Surfside building had design flaws, the engineering flaws. Building plans specified structural columns that were too narrow to accommodate enough rebars, which also means the contractor had to choose between cramming extra steel into too small columns, which can create air pockets that lead to accelerated corrosion. Or the other option with the contractor was to develop a poor slab to column connection. Secondly, the columns were barely designed with enough strength to support a pool party. Coupled with standing water over time, this deck was overloaded for decades. Last but not the least, to make the situation worse, the condo association also delayed the repairs of the issues that were identified in the engineering reports because of infighting among the members of the association. Well, to fix these problems, ladies and gentlemen, the government came out with the SB 4D building safety law. Unfortunately, it took a tragedy like the Surfside to pass this law.
110 yeas, 0 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Bill passes.
With a unanimous vote in the Florida House,
this is real policy with real change affecting real families.
Lawmakers like State Rep Jackie Toledo from Tampa say they're hoping to prevent another tragedy similar to the catastrophic condo collapse in Surfside last summer.
So the question is, what is the SB 4D and how can it really fix all these problems? As usual, let's try to understand using a simple, relatable example. Let's say I live in Orlando in a 3-story or higher constructed building. The building is constructed prior to 1992, July 1st. Note that even today, most buildings still do a reserve study, but the structural element from the reserve study is still missing. That being said, Assuming I'm the board of director of my condo association, it's my responsibility to hire a structural engineer to perform a visual inspection that meets the SB4D law requirements of my building. This visual inspection is also known as the Phase 1 inspection. Now, I want you to know that if there is no substantial structural deterioration observed during the Phase 1, engineers will not trigger the Phase 2 inspection. By the way, this is an oversimplified example where the building's location is in Orlando. In reality, if the building is within 3 miles of the coastline, the milestone inspection needs to be performed when the building is 25 years old and 10 years thereafter. Further, repair works highlighted in the engineering report also need to begin within 365 days when the report is submitted. Now, if my building is 30 years or older, I will hire an engineer for 2 studies, milestone inspection and the visual inspection for the structural integrity reserve study. If my building is less than 30 years old, I would hire an engineer for the visual inspection for structural integrity reserve study only. Now the question is, what kind of condos are required to do the structural integrity reserve study? Well, the answer is quite simple. All the condo associations 3-story or higher existing before July 1st, 2022 are required to perform this study regardless of their age. Well, now the other question is, how is the structural integrity reserve study different from the milestone inspection? Well, they're not too different in a few aspects. However, structural integrity reserve study is still even broader term than the milestone inspection. The condo associations are required to estimate and account for the dollar values of all the expenses that are more than $10,000. Now, to estimate the dollar value, one must know the required repairs and the remaining useful life of the building components. That includes the roof, load-bearing walls, primary structural members, floor, foundation, along with fireproofing, fire protection systems, and plumbing. That's where the visual inspection by a licensed engineer comes in. We at McCall Engineering are providing visual inspection for all the above items with exception of plumbing, fire protection, and fireproofing. The fun part over here is, in spite of the fact that this SB4D building safety law is developed to give condo residents and the local building department a sense of peace of mind that the building they live in is safely maintained and structurally sound, unfortunately, this law seems to be becoming a nightmare for condo associations. Now, the fun part here is a very similar law was passed in 2008 that required condo associations for maintenance, useful life, and replacement cost. The inspection must be performed. However, that law was repealed shortly after its enactment in 2010. The reason was it was too expensive. Now, another fun fact over here is there are 1.53 million condo units in Florida, operated by 27,588 condo associations. Now, out of these condo associations, 2 million residents live in 30 years or older constructions. The interesting number here is that there are only 40,789 engineers licensed to practice in the state of Florida. This number was even lower in the year 2008 and 2010. This was the reason why inspections were even more expensive back then. So in short, you will be paying more for the visual inspection the more you wait, get to the last date of the inspection, by the simple demand and supply logic. The closer you are to the due date of December 31, 2024, the engineering cost will be the highest, while the quality of the product may not be the same during the final hour, as there would be less time available to review, introspect, and discuss with the engineers about any additional engineering opinion that you may require for the same inspection. Hoping for the law to get relaxed or pushed out may just be a mere wishful thinking. Now, that brings me to the third part of my presentation, is the cost you pay and the product you get. While we at McCall Engineering are shooting to get you an incredible product, while also educating you along the way about every step involved in the building safety law, I also want you to know that we are trying to keep the cost low for you. Firstly, let's talk about the product. What happens when you sign the contract? The product is a visual inspection report that meets the requirements of the SB4D law. We will come out to perform a visual inspection, and we will fill out an attached visual inspection sheet for each condo and the common areas. Now, what we would need from you during the inspection, we would need your structural plans and all the structural information to develop a continuous load path of the building. Once we establish the continuous load path, we will determine the members that are critical. If any of the critical load-bearing members show signs of substantial structural deterioration, we would need to trigger phase 2 evaluation. Now, the second part is the cost. We charge $225 an hour. The estimate of the hours for a full-blown visual inspection is roughly 45 minutes times the number of units in your building. For those associations who have low reserves, we also have an alternate solution to help you as well. We may reduce the cost by about 40% through participation of the residents. For a more customized quotation, feel free to give us a call. Finally, we are at the last part of our presentation, why you should choose McCall Engineering. McCall Engineering has a relevant experience of more than 20 years. We understand the condo business in and out, and also your budgeting constraints. We have been in the business for a very long time, and we have our insurance that covers us for the same. Now, sooner or later, every condo association would have to pay for the visual inspection. However, lucky ones would be those who gets a good engineer. As usual, I'm going to emphasize this fact by an example. Recently, a condo association in Venice was issued an unsafe building notice. Can you imagine an unsafe building notice in a building where residents are already living for a long time? This notice was issued by the building department because the engineer who visually inspected prior to us inspected a spall beam and issued a notice to vacate the building within 60 days. Well, this was a rental property on Airbnb, and you know how much financial loss it would cause to vacate the building. As a result, the condo association hired us, McCall Engineering, for a second opinion. We did the visual inspection along with an analytical or phase 2 evaluation. We not only helped the building owners resolve the unsafe building notice, but also helped them with repair procedures that would improve the life of the building through minimal repair cost. I would be happy to provide their reference and contact information if asked. That's it from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, make sure to hit the like button and make us happy by giving us your business. For more insights about this new law, SB4D, feel free to give us a call.
Thank you for watching. Have a good one.